Hello, welcome to another episode of Constitutionalist Podcast. I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard. That's Lenard. It looks French. It's not. It's Leonard without an O. Thank you for tuning in. As Graham Norton used to say on his show, let's get on with the show! Hello, everybody. I just wanted to let you know this brief intro. I'm going to double up 2 a week for the rest of January to get caught up on a few interviews I've recorded lately. They're kind of piling up. They're going a little too far in the future. I don't want to keep people waiting that long. So for the rest of January, I'll do 2 during the week rather than 1 midweek drop on Wednesday. So Tuesday and Thursday, the rest of January. Anyway, let's get some guests on, as Graham Norton currently says, and I'm borrowing. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Constitutionalist Podcast. Going to join me today is Russell Van Brocklin. It's Van, not Von, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, I just to get that right to start with. And today is not officially a listener feedback show, but it kind of sort of is, because Russell heard September 3 episode, October Special 9 with J.M. Shaw, and we talked autism, and he reached out to me. So that's kind of where we'll start from, and then we'll go wherever things, whatever, you know me, wherever the rabbit holes open, that's the ones we dive down. So welcome to the show, Russell.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and before we get into that, let's do, the usual nitty gritty. Where were you born? Where were you raised? Where are you now? Any significant spots you've been to along the way in between, that sort of stuff?
Well, I was born in Amsterdam, New York, but the more interesting thing about my story is I wasn't supposed to be doing this. I was supposed to be a bureaucrat for the New York State government. So just quickly how I got into this and what my first project was. It was the late 90s. I wanted to know how laws were made, not some class I wanted to know.
Schoolhouse Rock didn't cut it for you, huh?
Yeah, so I sign up for the New York State Assembly internship, and I show up and I say, here's my neuropsychological evaluation. I have a first grade reading and writing ability. And the director looked at that and said, this is not going to work. This can't work. So it went up to the speaker's office. They decided they had to accommodate me, whatever that was. So they formed a committee. They made the decision. They're removing me from the legislative office building, and they're putting me in the Capitol, in the Majority Leaders Program and Council's office. And they held with bated breath what I was going to say, because now I'm away from all of my peers. And I said, cool, because now that's a graduate level internship, not an undergrad. So then I go in and I see why I was placed there. They had 3 administrative assistants that could take my horrendous writing and on a weekly basis put it in so I could turn it in. For the academic portion, I had to do a major research project, and a standard accommodation for me back then was, instead of the 20-page research paper, I gave an hours-long Q&A presentation along question and answers afterwards. At the end, they recommended 3.67 for 15 credits. Then it goes back to the State University of New York Center at Buffalo, political science department. They didn't like the 3.67 GPA. They didn't like my accommodations. So guess what they adjusted it to?
Go ahead.
F. 0. Nothing. Okay. Which just destroyed my transcript. And I was like, I'm done with the discrimination. Because I was in the majority leader's office, I could have gotten a lobbying job. I could have gotten any one of state positions because I could just pick up the phone and talk to the people running the place day to day. Well, instead, I asked my professors, where can I go to force myself to learn to read and write in grad school? And they looked at me and they're kind of laughing. Law school. So I went. Yes. And they said they were kind of joking, but I went anyway. Second day of contracts, I'm called by Professor Warner, who was a dyslexic professor. What they do in law school is they crush you the first couple of days until you eventually adapt by asking you questions you don't know the answer to and embarrassing you. Didn't happen
Kind
to
of
me.
brings to mind Legally Blonde, the movie.
Yes, exactly. But that but that didn't happen to me because as I found with dyslexics, we own grad school day one or soon thereafter. I responded back to Professor Warner, and after a couple of questions, he's looking a little perplexed because I'm responding at his level. Everything just focused and organized for the first time. Goes on 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. He's very confused. Thought I went to law school someplace else before. Nope, first time. And what he said is at the end of 15 minutes, Russell, you couldn't be any more correct. I have to move on for the interest of time. I learned to read within a month. I learned to write within a couple of years. Then I went back to the New York State Senate and I said, I want you to fund my dyslexia research project. They don't fund dyslexia research projects, but I got them to after a number of years. And what we did is we took a bunch of highly motivated, highly intelligent dyslexics, juniors and seniors. They had middle school reading and writing skills. One class period a day for the school year, they increased their writing to average range of entering graduate school students. Bypassed high school, bypassed college. Cost New York State less than $900 a kid. They all went on to college. They all graduated with GPAs of 2.5 to 3.6.
Yeah. Well, you know what bothers me the most here is it's clear everybody's assumption these are all write-off kids, right?
Mhm.
Oh, they can't learn, they won't learn, why bother? The bigotry of low expectation, indiscriminatory in anyone is capable if given the right conditions. And indeed, rather than writing them off, indeed some may need special attention or help, but we want them to do well in society, not become a somebody who's permanently got a ride in the cart.
Right. But again, these were very unusual kids in that they were extraordinarily intelligent and massively motivated. So when I did that, I went down to New York City to present in 2006. I thought I did something amazing. I thought I did something that would change the world. I was wrong. Because the first thing the teachers asked were, okay, you did this for the superstar kids. They're very rare. And I said, yep. We said, what about the rest of the kids?
Yeah.
And I said, no, this will absolutely not work. So they said, go ahead and fix that. I came back when I did.
That's the key. Find out what can be portable from what you learned there to now motivate and help others not in that upper echelon of that class. Indeed, right.
Yeah. Problem is, it took me 8 years to figure it out,
Oh.
which I'm about to explain to you very quickly.
Hey, things don't happen overnight.
Well, this
but they
is
don't get done at all if you don't try.
Well, I'm going to explain dyslexia. This is the book on dyslexia, the number one in the field. It's from Dr. Shaywitz. She's a medical doctor at Yale. All right.
And it's titled Overcoming Dyslexia for those not viewing on behind the scenes video.
Yes. All right. I'm going to show you dyslexia. That's it. Do you see how the back part of my brain has next to no neural activity, but yours is going crazy? Okay. So just your readers your listeners can understand the back part of your brain has massive neural activity. Mine has basically next to zero. But the front part of my brain, you see how that's about 2.5 times overactive? Okay. So what I had this really strange idea. If the front part of my brain is working like crazy, 2.5 times more active than yours, and the back part has nothing going on, why am I worrying about the back part? Let's look at the front part. So, according to Yale, that part of the brain does two things: articulation followed by word analysis. So, people think, were you insane by doing that original program? Why did you do that? I said, because the front part of the brain is articulation. And the name of that test is the Graduate Records Exam Analytical Writing Section. Analytical articulation, about the same thing. That was the breakthrough. Okay. Now, when I'm looking at doing this with normal kids, I found out I had to flip that around. Word analysis followed by articulation. Now, this, what I'm about to tell you, are things that your listeners can do tonight to help your dyslexic kid really improve their reading and writing skills. Are you ready?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So, do you know any dyslexic elementary school kids ever?
Myself personally, no.
Okay. So I'm going to give you an example. The one I use all the time, her name is Sarah. Why do I use her? Because she has a specialty, an area of extreme interest and ability that people can relate to. She loves swimming. She's on the swim team. She gets to the pool every chance she can get. So what we do is we have you write out 10 things, type out 10 things the kid really, really likes, and then 10 things that they really, really hate. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to have you go to a laptop with a real keyboard, not an iPad, not an iPhone, and certainly not handwriting. A real laptop with a real keyboard. You're going to type out hero plus sign. What are we talking about? And then the kid's going to copy that. That's okay. Professor James Collins, Strategies for Struggling Writers, Default Writing Strategy of Copying. All right. Then we're going to swap out hero for the kid's name. So we're going to swap out hero plus sign, what are we talking about, to Sarah plus sign, what are we talking about? Now we're going to go to the list of what she really likes. The top thing is swimming, and we're going to swap that out for what are we talking about. So now we got Sarah plus sign swimming. See how we got there? Okay. Now I'm going to try to fool you with the simplest questions ever. If you ask them exactly right, because remember, these will be the simplest questions you were ever asked in your life. If you answer them exactly, this works. If it doesn't work. And people normally have an epiphany on what dyslexia is really like. Do you think I'm going to fool you? I'm going to be able to fool you?
Probably.
Okay. So remember, we got Sarah.
Hey,
plus sign.
I have no hubris. I'm human. I'm frail. I'm flawed. I can be fooled like anybody else.
Okay. So what we have now is Sarah plus sign swimming. We need to swap out the plus sign for a word to complete the sentence. So here's my question. Remember, Sarah loves swimming beyond anything else. Sarah plus sign swimming. We got to swap out the plus sign. Here's my question. Does Sarah like or dislike swimming?
Yeah, loves, obviously.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you see? That's not what I asked. It doesn't
right.
work. Do you see what mistake you made?
I just immediately went beyond the question.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was your mistake?
Not taking it literal.
Okay. So just so you know what
you
happened.
you gave a multiple choice, and I went off script.
Right. But so what you did is what educated people tend to do. Instead of like, you came up with a much better word and you added an S to make it a proper sentence. Sarah doesn't know how to add the S. So, how do rich people do it? You know, those flying around in private jets. They would send their child to a Orton Gillingham multi-sensory structured language school with a 4-to-1 to 5-to-1 student to teacher ratio at $75,000 a year for 4 to 5 years. All right, and they would use
Great if you can afford it.
Yeah, any of you, if you have house money, you don't need to listen anymore. If you can drop $500K on this, go ahead. And that's just tuition, not living expenses. So what do? They use seeing, hearing, touching, take everything they can imagine sense-wise to get the kid to read. Takes 2 years to become certified at $11,000. I'm going to teach you a much better way. Right now, real fast. Sarah would have said like, because that's what I asked her. It would have been Sarah like swimming. I would have said, Sarah, does that sound, read what you wrote out loud. Sarah likes swimming. Sarah, does that sound generally correct? No. Sarah, fix it. Sarah likes swimming. We do 10 likes and 10 dislikes until it's all correct. Do you see how like and dislike is a simple form of word analysis? That is part of the front part of the brain. So I'm taking from the back part of the brain, which has nothing going on, and I'm moving it to the front part that's 2.5 times overactive. Now that's the first part. Then we do go because reason one.
Versus automatically assuming there needs to be a surgical or chemical fix to the issue.
Yeah. So the next thing we do is we go because reason one. Now, reason, do you see how reasons are a form of articulation?
Okay.
Okay. So like and dislike is a simple form of word analysis. The reasons are a simple form of articulation. We're now moving from the back part of the brain to the front part of the brain that's 2.5 times overactive. Give me a simple reason why a 10-year-old girl likes swimming.
I'm not fond of the water myself, so would have a hard time actually answering because she's good at it.
Because Sarah likes swimming because she's good at it. Okay. Now, do you see now because she's dyslexic, we got a whole mess of misspelled words. Now, here's how you fix that. First thing you do is you tell Sarah to read what she wrote out loud. Sarah likes swimming because she's good at it. Sarah, does that sound generally correct? If no, retype it until it does. We're not trying to get rid of every grammatical error. We're trying to get rid of the nasty stuff. The teachers can do the simple and mid-level stuff. Okay, so we got that down. Now we got all these misspelled words. Now we say, Sarah, you have to keep retyping this until they're all spelled correctly. So she goes, okay. And then she sits there and she really tries. She says, I'm not going to make that mistake. And she keeps making it between 3 and 13 times. Every time she has to retype, she concentrates harder and harder to around a 9 to 13 times. Sometimes you can see sweat coming down her forehead. It's that intense. That's where the magic happens. She keeps making those mistakes until she doesn't. And then you repeat those until it's successful for each of the 10 likes and 10 dislikes. Then it's the same thing for reason one and reason two, 10 likes and 10 dislikes until they're all correct. Then reason one, reason two, and reason three. Once you get that done, you're now taking her writing from probably the kindergarten, beginning first grade level to the end of second, beginning third grade level.
You know what else also comes to mind here is the book we no longer ask kids to read, Flowers for Algernon.
Okay. Yeah. But the key thing, I'll get to that in a second, but the key thing here is the writing has improved that much. Now, here's a key thing. Parents ask me about reading. And I say, I don't teach reading. I teach writing because here's the big thing. If they can write it, they can read it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. If you can write it, you know how to write the word. You obviously should be able to visually understand if that's how I write it, that's how I understand it when I see it on the page.
Exactly. Now let's get to like the book you mentioned. Here's I'm going to give you, it's going to be kind of a long story. I'm sorry, just what I just told you. For a 10-year-old, that'll take between 2 and 6 weeks. For a third grader, it'll take the entire semester. Because here's the difference with my process with everything else. The older the child is, the quicker they will pick it up. Orton Gillingham is the exact opposite because if they're in 5th grade, they got to learn everything they're supposed to learn K through 4th grade plus 5th grade. And it just gets horrible. Now, the older they are, the quicker they pick it up. It flips that completely.
And the younger the mind, the less it's been indoctrinated to assume I can't do this or I can't do that, all that negativity built in.
Yep. Now you mentioned a book, but the key thing with these kids is you have to focus until their intervention period is over, until they're reading and writing at grade level. Until that's through, you absolutely have to focus on their speciality. their area of extreme interest and ability. This is going to be a little bit of time, but just so you really understand it.
Well,
I
I
want your
want to
audience.
ask a question here
Sure.
because when most people think dyslexia, you
Hmm.
think you see things in scramble or you put
Hmm.
them in scramble, but you don't recognize that it is scrambled. What you are saying to me is they can recognize it's scrambled and having to learn how to correct from the brain to the hand the scrambling or
Hmm.
the unscrambling. Does that make any sense?
Yes, because the scrambling, which I'll get to a little later, okay, it's because the front part of the brain is massively overactive. There's little to no organization. So the people think that dyslexia is a reading problem. It's not. It's lack of organization. I can actually teach dyslexics to read better in high school than most reading teachers. Okay. And I'll get to that a little later, but the key part, the next thing you need to understand is what I'm about to tell you is I never saw it before. I will never see this again. This was a one off. Her name was Casey. I met her at the end of fifth grade. She was 10. She turned 11 over the summertime. Casey was reading at the second grade level. She was really interested in Theodore Roosevelt. She said she wanted to do reading first. I said, Casey, I never do reading first. It doubles the workload. It makes no sense. And she said, I want to do reading first. I said, okay, here's how you do it.
If that's how she's motivated to do it, then it,
I
you
thought
know,
she was going to crash. I've done this before. The kids crash within a week or two. I told her mom, pick out, 5, 10, 20 minutes a session. She does it a couple times a week. It's up to her. I didn't know Casey. So I assigned her this little book called The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt. All 900 pages of this
whoa.
sucker. This thing won the Pulitzer.
Yeah, that's what I call a novel X'd, right? You got a short story, you got novella, you got novelette, you got novel. I created the term novel X'd, like an
Mhm.
extended novel. It's you don't start a kid with War and Peace normally, right?
That's
And
essentially
and
what I did
here
with her.
exactly. That's why I'm making the comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I gave that because that's the number one book on the, it's part of a trilogy. So she starts going through it 2 to 3 hours a night for 6 months, plus most of the day during the summertime. And then she's now 6 months later. She's in silent reading. Kids come over, pick up her book. They can't get through the first paragraph. Teacher calls mom. I thought your daughter had severe dyslexia. I thought that she had a reading problem. She's the best reader in her grade by grade level. What's going on? Her mom calls me. I said, what do you think she's been doing in her bedroom for 2 to 3 hours a night for 6 months? So then her mom said, is it just that book or can it transfer over to something else? So I said, oh, I can test that.
Right, because she was highly motivated on a subject she wanted
Yep.
to be able to read. What about something she considers boring but kind of needs to read? Yes.
So I assigned her this little thing. Walt
Walt
Disney, The
Disney.
Triumph of the American Imagination. All 1,000 pictures of this sucker.
Oh my. Yeah. And
What?
you mentioned silent reading because I would think the best way to overcome a reading issue would be trying to sound it out because just because you can't read doesn't mean you can't understand it if you hear the word. So if you can sound it out, you can understand it better. But you're saying
No,
silent
no,
reading?
nope, nope, nope. We use audiobooks while they follow along. The same thing. But
Okay.
but here's the key thing. This is the most Walt Disney's biography is the most popular book I teach because the kids love going to Disney World and the parents say, if you can learn to read, I'll take you to Disney World. So so
Turn it into a make-a-wish thing, huh?
right. So they go into Marceline, they go into Magic Kingdom. It's Main Street, USA. That's based on Marceline, Missouri, where Walt was between 5 and 10. And that's 3,600 words, that section. And they want to know, what's the Disney magic? And I say, it's two universal themes. And the kids go, what is it? I said, you have to find out. Okay. And that generally takes about 2 years. Casey did that in 3 months. And then I got her mom on the phone. I said, let's have some fun with this. I said, Casey, what did you think of Walt Disney's biography? I hate it. And I said, okay, we're done. And she found a very interesting way of destroying it. Here's why I'm spending all of this time on this. I said, Casey, the most motivated kid I ever worked with, when you moved to something that you hated, what happened to your motivation? She said it dropped by about 50%.
Mm-hmm.
A normal kid is down 75 to 80%.
Whoa.
So I want you to think. Remember back in high school when you did book after book after book?
Like Flowers for Algernon? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
These
Atlas
kids,
Shrugged, or
yeah.
To Kill a Mockingbird, and all
Yeah.
the Shakespeare. Love Shakespeare, but some of it can be dry to get through.
Yeah. These kids want us. I'm on a book with them for 6 months to several years until they can read it. Now, remember, I give this book on Disney to 10-year-olds. This is for 17. If it
I
takes them to read
wouldn't
this
read
until they're
that.
12, if they can read this at 12, they're way ahead of the game.
Yeah.
So you're down 75, 80%. Next, you can't ask a dyslexic until the intervention period is over. You can't ask them a general to a specific question. So I want you to think back when you were in high school. Do you remember how they would teach this big question and they eventually got to the details much later on? Okay. You can't do that with dyslexics. So you can't ask them a question like this. What effect did Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech have on the American Civil Rights Movement? It's like grabbing frog. There's nothing there. You have to ask a specific to a general question. What personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech? We start off at a very specific point. We look up in his bio. We find out that answer gets us another question, which gets us an answer, which gets us another question. Here's a key point. Forces the brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output because the front part of our brain is 2.5 times overactive. Here's the key question. You ask a dyslexic, in your speciality, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed? Key question, but with little to no organization. They're going to say yes.
Well, I have OCD, so yeah, to a degree, I understand that concept. Yeah, the constant bouncing around of thoughts from everywhere, constantly intrusive, and harder to then focus. So yeah, I personally grasp that.
So we have to force the dyslexic brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. So what's the system? We focus during the intervention period on their speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability. We teach them from the specific to the general, and we focus on word analysis followed by articulation. How does this work? How effective is this? Everybody said, give me an example. So I finally said, fine. And then I met Kimberly, December 27th, 2024.
I gotta stop because there's a pattern here so far. All females? Is there a gender aspect of any of this?
Well, her son Reed is a boy, but I will admit when we're talking about K through high school, that Google used to give us way too much information, and I found out it was 90% of moms who deal with it. Dad generally dealt with it in college when it's a failure to launch, and their kid's going to be at home with them when they're 30. They don't want that. So, but back to Reed, he was reading and writing. I didn't realize Kimberly just spent $700 to have the state of Ohio test her kids. So he was reading and writing at the beginning, third grade level, a year and a half behind. Now, if he were in public school for the rest of the school year, he would have supposed to increase by 2 to 2.5 points. Didn't happen. He increased by 20 points. Kimberly took his reading level from the 11th percentile to the 65th, his writing from the 4th percentile to the 64th. Why is this important? because last summer Reed's friends came to him and said, Reed, we want you in public school to be with us socially. If that was January, he would have been in special ed, away from his friends, unhappy kid. Now he's in sixth grade, mainstream, normal classes, everything, getting A's and B's because his mother did what every parent dreams of and solved this herself without the need of a $75,000 school that couldn't solve it in that amount of time. And people think, well, she must have been working him night and day. No, she spent less than half the time the school would have taught him in English. And she taught him 7 times faster. That's how effective this is. And yes, he's in normal classes, he's not in his speciality anymore, even though he wants to be, but he's doing just fine. And yes, he did complain, but his teachers, like any well-raised kid, his parents and his teachers became a rock. And he's splashing up against a rock that isn't moving. So then he gave up and said, okay, I'll do it. But, we did run into a little bit of that.
Well, that's a whole other show. Why parents have got to be parents. You can't let the kid run the roost and just do whatever he or she wants. Yeah.
But Kimberly, when he was 2 and 3, spent the time with him in the terrible twos, put up boundaries. And yes, kids will try to test the boundaries. But as I said, a well-raised kid where the parents really put the time in, they run up against the rock and it's not moving. So he kind of, he's not going to push it. Okay. So that is essentially what dyslexia is. And it's not that hard to fix.
If people will put in the work, if
you follow how the brain is
Yeah.
actually, notice what I did. Again, I'm going to go back to the brain image for those that you are watching. The back part of the brain has essentially nothing going on.
Yeah.
The front part is massively overactive.
Yeah.
So here's what
I'm going to go back to the whole bigotry of soft expectations and writing people off. You've got to care enough to say, I know you're capable of more.
Yeah. So what I tell parents is, just so they can understand what's going on, I would say, do you remember back in middle, high school, college, whatever, that if you're not neurodiverse, if you're the normal brain, if you did 2 things, if you planned properly and then you worked really hard, I'm not saying every class, but in general, you did well to really well if you did those 2 things. And if you didn't plan, if you didn't work hard, then you did bad. Okay, it's that simple. The schools are not trying to make a problem for neurodiverse kids. It's just 80+% of their students this works for if they plan and work hard. Now with dyslexics, that same part that's used kindergarten through college, that part of the brain, we got nothing going on back there essentially. But the front part, like how powerful this is. Remember what I said in law school? I walked in second day of class and contracts, and I was the professor's equal for 15 minutes. He'd never seen that before in his 30+ years. That is the power of dyslexia. When I had to get my original program approved, it was supposed to take years. I did it in less than 2 weeks. Again, the benefit of being dyslexic.
Yeah, you took a weakness and turned it into a strength in a way.
Well, no, I just went to grad school where it was incredibly focused. Remember what I said about the speciality?
That focus,
incredibly narrowly focused. Everything else, they want to make me well-rounded. I don't want to be well-rounded. I want to specialize.
And most people do. We all have a preference, a interest. My interest, even though I'm an author today, I joke in my books. I hope my writing style doesn't throw you too much and demonstrates my love of math in school, right? I loved math. I was going to be an accountant, but that didn't happen. I went into computers, loved that. But yeah, we all have areas we would rather go. And yeah, a lot of that other stuff we want to push aside. That's kind of part of a human nature thing, dyslexic or not.
Well, yeah, but here's what it comes down to really to really just show you what's going on, I want you to imagine, what sport are you horrible in? For me, it's basketball. What sport are you just, you're the
Yeah,
worst? What is that?
I'm not too good at basketball either, right? I played hockey, so hockey
Okay.
was my
But
thing. Yeah,
what sport are you horrible at?
yeah. Ba- I might even say soccer, just because I was
Okay.
bored to tears at it.
Okay.
So,
So let's
yeah.
say, so here's the thing with soccer. If we were to give you the best soccer equipment money could buy, okay, get you the best soccer coach and made your opponents who's really good at soccer, give them used Walmart equipment, you're still going to lose all the time, okay? Because your body was not designed for soccer. That's what it's like to be accommodated. Oh, we'll give you all the best of all this stuff and it doesn't work. It's kind of like if I were to go up against you in hockey. I'll give you a little hint. I suck at hockey. All right. I could
Can
go
barely
and
stand
get,
up on skates, right? Yeah.
yeah, I could go and get the best skates in the world, the best hockey equipment, and get you Walmart equipment that was used and 30 years old and beat the heck, and you would still just annihilate me on the hockey rink, okay? Because your body was designed for hockey. Okay. It's what you're good at and you practice. That's the thing. You can accommodate these kids all day long, but you're accommodating the back part of the brain that is essentially nothing going on there. That's why we have to focus on through the intervention period until we get them to grade level.
Mhm.
Now, I've had parents ask me, what happens after, you get them to grade level? Let's say they're older. I said, okay, the next thing I'm going to show you how to do is how to take these dyslexic kids and to write body paragraphs, because if they can do multiple body paragraphs, the teachers can do the thesis and conclusion. And if you're doing a paper, it's just a whole bunch of body paragraphs. All right. And I'm going to tell you now the secret of how to get these dyslexic kids to write structurally better informational paragraphs than AP English seniors, than advanced placement English kids. All right. So what we do is first of all, we show them how to find a quote based on a universal theme. Without that, they can't do the basic body paragraphs. Now now we show them how to do two quotes, one at the beginning of the material, one near the end. And then from those two quotes, we show them how to construct a topic sentence. Now I'm going to ask you something that almost nobody outside of a PhD knows about. Do you have any idea how to use a warrant in a body paragraph?
No.
That's because people don't learn that until a
When I
doctoral degree.
Yeah, when I hear warrant, I think somebody's being arrested. Yeah.
Exactly. So people ask me, what's a warrant? And what it's designed to do is to connect your topic sentence with your data, which in this case is two quotes. And it's done so in an analytical, conversational way. So all those paragraphs you write that are just a data dump, this makes it so much more. And then the last thing we do is we show you some ideas on what the New York State Regents exam for high school English and the craft of research for grad students. We use that to finish it off. But the application of taking two quotes from that, creating a topic sentence, and then connecting those with a warrant, you do that, and your their paragraphs are not as flowery or as well written as an AP English kid, never will be, but the structure and the analytics are higher because they're using a warrant, which is for PhD kids. All right, and just that. Oh, this gets to be so much fun. I'll typically teach like a dyslexic boy or girl in middle school, and then they have an older brother or sister who's fighting to be valedictorian in high school. They're AP kids, AP English kids, and then they're like, my dyslexic sibling, my younger brother or sister, is writing a informational paragraph better than I can, but I'm the academic superstar. I'm the AP English. It drives them crazy, and then they ask, "Can you show me how to do it?" And I said, some of you, most of you, not really, because that part of your brain has a fifth of what's going on. Huh? and it just shocks them. And it's beautiful.
Okay, well, as we said before we hit record, I generally keep the shows around 30 minutes and we're a little over. The more we get into weeds, the more people may trail off. I'd rather leave them wanting more.
Exactly.
And if they want more, where do they find you? Do you have a website?
Yes, the easiest thing to do is just go to dyslexiaclasses.com. That's plural with an S, dyslexiaclasses.com. There's going to be a button there that says download free guide. Just click on it, answer a few questions, get your free documents, the 3 reasons your child's having trouble in school due to dyslexia. Then the most important thing, you have to sign up to speak with me directly for half an hour so I can help find your kid's speciality and get them their book and their audio book so you know what to use to help teach them. It's a half an hour. There's no cost. But if you don't do that, this isn't going to be anywhere near as effective because it's really hard to find that speciality.
Thank you. Normally I try to repeat a name 3, 5, 7 times, right? Repetition gets it to sink in. But of course, in post, for those viewing behind the scenes video, the name will be written across the bottom. Thank you, Russell Van Brocklin, for coming on. I appreciate your time. I'm glad we were able to connect.
Thanks for contact. Thanks for letting me on.
Take care, everyone. God bless. Love you all. Like and subscribe to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help. Thank you for having tuned into another Constitutionalist Podcast show. I really appreciate that you stopped by. Again, please like, share, subscribe. We need you to help spread the Constitutionalist movement. Thank you again. Take care. God bless. Love you all.